Good evening, everyone. Moving on to the last panel of the day, we have with us Fawzan Husain and Chirodeep Chaudhuri, along with Karanjeet Kaur as the moderator, talking about the various portrayals and representations of Bombay through photographs over the years. Sooni Taraporevala will unfortunately not be able to join us. I shall quickly introduce our panelists for the evening. Fawzan Husain is a photojournalist, teacher, and an organic farmer. A self-taught photographer, he has spent 28 years as a photojournalist. His work has been published in several publications and exhibited around the world. He has published 2 books, Between Bombay and Mumbai, 25 Years in Pictures Through a Changing City, and The Silver Screen and Beyond. He divides his time between Bombay and Pune, teaching documentary photography. Our next panelist, Chirodeep Chaudhuri, is the author of the critically acclaimed book, A Village in Bengal, Photographs and an Essay, the result of a 13-year-long preoccupation with his ancestral village in West Bengal and his family's nearly 2-century-old tradition of the Durga Puja. His most recent book, With Great Truth and Regard, documents the history of the typewriter in India. He has produced diverse documents of his home city through projects such as Bombay Clocks and The Commuters, among others. He has previously worked as the editor of photography at magazines such as Time Out Mumbai and National Geographic Traveller India. Karanjeet Kaur, who will be moderating the session, is the deputy editor of the recently launched digital platform Array. She was formerly the deputy editor of National Geographic Traveller India and Time Out Mumbai. She writes on a variety of subjects, including art, culture, and travel, and has reported for publications such as the India Today, the Mint Lounge, the Caravan, and Art India in the past. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Kala Ghoda Arts Festival. And thank you for taking the time out to be here tonight. It's a lovely evening, but I hope everyone's armed with the mosquito repellent. It's a wonderful and unnerving feeling to be sitting in the august company of 2 of the city's most ardent and consistent photographers and documentarians, one of whom I have the good fortune of counting among my friends, and both of whom I deeply admire professionally. Khorshed's already introduced everyone, but quickly, Chiro has been the art and photography editor of Time Out magazine India and National Geographic India, where we work together. And Fawzan, as you already know, has been associated with the publications Midday and India Today over his 28-year-long career. He has also published 2 books, Between Bombay and Mumbai, 25 Years in Pictures Through a Changing City, and The Silver Screen and Beyond, up close and personal with the Bombay film industry. It's unfortunate that we don't have Sooni Taraporevala with us today, who's had to be detained because of a family emergency. We'll miss her, especially because her body of work, The Parsis, is such a quintessential Bombay story. Which brings me to the heart of our discussion today, photographing this crazy, beautiful, confusing, overwhelming city, and this most celebrated, toasted, reviled city, loved and hated in equal measure. The city which is simultaneously home and away for so many of us. Before we begin, I'd like to read out an Oscar Wilde quote that I've often heard, read, tweeted about, and I think it's particularly germane to our discussion today. And it goes, "The true mystery of the world is the visible, not the invisible." Here we are today, with 2 of the city's chroniclers demystifying the visible. I'd like to begin with a personal question to both of you, personal to your work, that is. Both Chiro and Fawzan, you guys have, at some point, each of you has photographed your community. Fawzan, you photographed the Bora community. Chiro, you've gone back to, a village in Bengal. If you could tell us a little bit about when and how did the process to look within start for each of you. And it isn't just the fact that you have access to these communities because you grew up in them, but what made you think that the stories that you wanted to tell about these communities were relevant and important? What do you think was missing out?
Okay, frankly, I don't follow any religion, and obviously, I don't follow even my religion. The only reason I started shooting the Bora community in which I was born was to keep my mom happy, And she always thought, what am I doing as a photographer? She had no idea what I was shooting. She was just like totally lost. Okay, why am I going every day on the street to shoot pictures? So one day I just wanted to make her happy. And I bought some pictures of the community to show it to her. And at that point of time, she realized, oh, I'm doing something worthwhile. And just to keep her happy, I went and kept shooting the community. And over a period of time, I had a very good collection. I still have a very good collection. And unfortunately, my mom passed away. So I'm going to continue doing that project. And see, access, it's very easy because you belong to the community. Although I don't belong that way, but I know what's happening within the community. I know where it is happening. So I can always get into them and get some pictures out. So basically, it was just done for the sheer love of my mom. There was no project in mind as such.
And now that you're continuing to document, like you just said, the community, is it to serve her memory or is it because you
Yeah,
really become interested
I
in the
want
subject?
to continue doing it. Even today morning, I went and shot some pictures. And I really don't know whether it's going to end up as a project or a book or something. But hopefully, someday it will see some light. But as of now, I'm not very clear what I'm going to do with those pictures. But I'm certainly going to continue working on it.
Would you like to tell us what were some of the first few pictures that you took of the community and
The very first assignment that I did was I was assigned to go to Karachi and shoot the head priest traveling to Karachi for a week. And that was a pure paid assignment, and I was only looking it through as a professional. And when I showed my mom those pictures, she was very happy, and I realized this is one way to make her happy, as a photographer. And I started continue doing the same thing. The first was an absolutely commercial assignment for me, and it just took off from there.
the struggle is real for all of us, journalists and photographers, I imagine. Chiro, the same question to you.
Okay, when I started photographing my village was quite by accident. I mean, I grew up in Bombay. I had grown up only hearing stories about the place. I'd never visited during Durga Puja because you would never get Puja vacations here like my cousins would in Calcutta. But I would keep hearing about it every year with a bit of intrigue. I mean, things like that. And then suddenly I was the opportunity to go there kind of landed up. I think probably when a couple of years into my career as a photographer, and since I was a photographer, I mean, I couldn't not go and shoot pictures. You know what I mean? So I landed up there, and I mean, it was just so exotic, the place. I mean. I think I was just gone like hook, line, and sinker. I mean, but the thing is, I mean, those first couple of years that I kept photographing, I didn't know my relatives a bit, very well. I obviously wasn't familiar with what was happening there. Meaning in terms of nuance, right? I mean, I was really going there. I was reacting more as a professional photographer would go there and kind of just making pictures of everything that seemed kind of a curiosity. And so I think, it took me a while. I think it took me, I obviously never thought of it as a book in the beginning. Like I keep telling everybody that, I was a few years into my career. I mean, I was looking at books at that time, which were really books by the great masters. I mean, to think that I could do a book was like positively arrogant. I mean, right? I mean, so I never thought that I could do a book.
What sort of books were you looking at?
These were, in those days, I mean, this is about 92, 93. This is pre-internet, pre-Amazon and all that. So there was good old Strand Bookshop and the mezzanine floor up there, where, I mean, very often on an afternoon I would go and sit there, and sit and go through books. I mean, and books. So I think my education in some way was kind of happening parallelly over there. I mean, though I was learning how to shoot pictures on assignments, but I mean, there was a lot of reading and kind of looking at photography, which I was doing there. A lot of the great masters, like, say, Katia Bresso, Eugene Smith, Eugene Atgay. I mean, in fact, the two Eugenes were kind of were huge favorites of mine. In fact, I think from Atgay, I got this. I was very, very taken up by Eugene Atgay's work of Paris, which was done, I think, in the late 1890s to about the early 1900s. These were pictures which he was shooting of Paris, which was at that point in transition. I mean, all these, new buildings were coming up, older neighborhoods were being pulled down. So he was photographing Paris, and I was really taken up by those pictures. Eugene Smith, I think the thing that I really learned from Eugene Smith, I don't know if I learned it, but I guess at a subliminal level kind of imbibed, was a certain obsessive sort of behavior with pursuing an idea. I must have been of a very impressionable mind in my career at that time. So I think, Eugene Smith had that kind of very strange effect on me. And which I think is what really led me to, keep at this thing of, photographing my village. Because I think it was about year 3 or year 4 when I, first started toying with the ideas of, maybe, this could be a book. Obviously, I didn't know how to do a book. I mean, I didn't even know how to do a photo, kind of create a narrative. I mean, So the project kind of helped me. It kind of was another sort of education which I gave myself while doing the project about how do you kind of create photo narratives, So my initial thing was not to document my family. I mean, it started out quite on a lark. I mean, just photographing things which were catching my fancy. And I think it really, over those 13 years, which I keep telling people, there was it was basically shot for 5 days in a year. So the entire thing is shot over 65 days, basically. But the 5 days of shooting and the remaining 360 days is when you were doing a lot of other things. I mean, I was beginning to kind of get interested in films. I was beginning to look at photography in different ways. And I think, all of these things my friend circle, which was growing, very interesting people that I was coming in contact with. And I think all of that was informing how I was going about doing this thing. And at some point, I think the idea of, me looking at it as a kind of documentation of my family kind of emerged. So it didn't start out from my first visit. Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring up this idea of, bringing a strange curiosity to your own family, to your own origins. Because, one of the questions that I wanted to ask both of you is the question of intimacy and the fact that I find that it's often harder to bring intimacy to subjects that you know very well, to your own home. And because there's a great deal of comfort in say, shooting strangers or, So is that a question you thought about when you were shooting the bodies and when you were shooting your village? Were you thinking about the question of intimacy? Did it matter to you at all?
So my first 3 years of shooting, none of the work kind of is there in the book. There's only one picture. But I mean, it's probably one of the easiest things to shoot because it's also one of the really pretty moments in those 5 days. I see my relatives doing a picture every year of the same thing on their mobiles now. I don't think their picture would be very different from the one that I had shot. But essentially, the pictures that were there in the first 3 years, the more I kept studying, the more I kept looking at them, I figured that there was a kind of distance. And I think this was also, and I think as a photographer, you would be able to catch it. I mean, he'll probably be able to tell you that as well. You would be able to catch it, in the little nuances of body language. Like I was aware, for instance, that, if I'm photographing, say, my aunts doing the Alpona, say the night before Shoshti, the moment they would see me with a camera at say 3 in the morning, their behavior would change. You know what I mean? And I think it took time for a certain kind of pictures to emerge, for them to really kind of forget that I was there. Because, I think about 4 or 5 years down the line, I think I was probably truly part of the family then. So I could be like sitting with my cousins. In fact, there is a picture, which is one of my favorite pictures, but it's a really tiny image in the book. My cousin brother and my sister-in-law, they had just gotten married. So my cousin's kind of lying on the bed, he's kind of leaning against one of those takiyas, and my sister, and they're kind of having an argument. I think it was their first fight after they got married, and I mean, I was there. But I mean, it wasn't just me. We were actually about 8 or 9 of us cousins in the room, and they were kind of in the corner, having their little moment. But if you see the picture, you will realize, actually, you wouldn't realize that we were a room full of cousins, and there was a lot of noise and things like that. But that's the kind of comfort level which I was able to kind of achieve only with time. And I think with any kind of project that one is taking up, I think it's also, I think the more you start kind of getting comfortable with the subject, I mean, I would imagine even if it's kind of inanimate stuff, I think your comfort with the subject kind of grows, and the way you kind of produce the pictures, those kind of change. Like I look at my pictures of public clocks in Bombay, I'm shooting it even now, it's 20 years. I can see in very minor ways how little shifts in how the earlier pictures were and how they are now, So, yeah.
Fawzan, what were some of your personal hurdles when you began to shoot?
Basically, I am shooting the community in public spaces, So there's not much entering into somebody's home or room or something. It's 80-90% of the pictures are done in public spaces, like private mosque and masjids and sermon gatherings and all that. So I don't have such problems as such. But I have also gone to various religious destinations, and they are spread all over the country. And there, a cameraman becomes a novelty, in small remote places. And then they want to either be part of it or don't want to be part of it. And little convincing sometimes helps, and sometimes you're shooed away, So it's part of your job. And as such, I haven't had any problems. But there are times when I have been slapped, and because it's an Orthodox community where you're not supposed to shoot women. They say that when they're at the congregation, you should not be shooting the woman there. And obviously, you can't have a project avoiding a woman in the picture, And so when I was shooting once, one of the guards saw me, security guards, and he came and snatched my camera. And I tried to reason out with him. The first thing he did was he gave me a slap. He's saying, his logic was, I'm going against the religion, And there's only that much you can argue with someone like that. So all I had to do was say sorry and walk out. That was my moment of realization that, I'm doing a community which is also very orthodox.
Sorry, you were talking about the whole intimacy thing. Like, say, for instance, I get asked this question very often when I'm, say, showing the commuters. Now commuters, again, was like shot over a period of, say, 4 years or something like that. Really shot at a distance of about 2.5 feet. Now the thing is, there are times when you also work out, you are probably aware of the kind of problems that you might encounter in shooting. So, for instance, the kind of camera that I was working with, right? I mean, the kind of behavior that I would. So I got into a routine like I mean, I'm anyway a daily commuter in Bombay. So, so you kind of got into that sort of a routine. And I think, I mean, slowly, I think people just get on with their lives. You know what I mean? So I think you have to be very patient to kind of achieve that kind of intimacy in your work. I mean, I think if as a photographer, you're kind of just rushing in and kind of, generally making, as Katya Bresso says, I mean, if you're kind of, creating a ripple in the pond, I mean, then I think there's a problem there. You know what I mean? So I think it's also in the approach that one kind of takes. You have to be patient. You have to give it time, and I think you will eventually kind of achieve the kind of intimacy that one is looking for in the image. Yeah.
Another question that I really wanted to ask both of you was, at some point, your bodies of work have looked back at the city at different periods. Chiro, you've shot clock towers, which is postcolonial, colonial Bombay. You've looked at contemporary Bollywood. What is your favorite period to be shooting? What is it that you have really enjoyed during your career?
I don't know if I have a favorite period because the thing that I've realized is, I mean, the city is so much in transition. Like, for instance, I mean, when I look at something like, say, a 1 rupee entrepreneur, which one was really photographing, these coin-operated payphones as a way of looking at this notion of enterprise. You suddenly realize that, it was like a moment in the city. I mean, and in a couple of years, the technology changed and, now it's kind of gone. That whole moment is gone. I think the clocks, I think my engagement with it has been much longer than so I don't know if I have a favorite period because I'd also tend to work on these for so long that, in that period that, I mean, a lot of transition happens within the city. So I guess it's very difficult to hold on to. And I think the transition's happening so much quicker now, right? I mean, so it's very difficult to hold on and say, oh, I like that period or whatever. I mean, I wouldn't even hazard that sort of a kind of thing, you know what I mean? So,
for me, shooting Bombay in rains is something which I really look forward to. And in the process, I spoiled my cameras, I spoiled my mobile phones. But, I always look forward to rains and especially flooding, And I get kind of a kick to go shoot in the floods,
Even after 28 years,
even now. But now, unfortunately, BMCS guys become so efficient. There's no flooding happening in the city, except for few pockets, But I'm always looking out for spots, and I know few spots where there's a recurring flooding. But generally, the flooding has receded in almost most part of Bombay, And that is one. And of course, Bollywood, I went in and went out. It wasn't the love of doing it, but it was just the experience of being inside for a while and coming out of. And I washed my hands now. Anything to do with Bollywood.
Why is that?
I worked for 12 years here, and I know it's so frustrating to be on the sets where on certain days nothing happens, and it's like just the wait, the sheer patience to wait on the sets to get something out of nothing happening there, And after 10, 11 years, I had was very frustrated in doing it. But I said, let me wrap it up. And once I finish it, I'll never ever step on the sets. And I haven't. After my book launch, I've never gone to any sets.
Tell us a little bit about the fact that you've captured the city at these different periods in time, And there are all these long-term projects that both of you have done, which have spanned a long period. But the city is constantly in flux, like you just said, Chiro. How would you do the stories that you once did differently? 1 rupee entrepreneur, for instance, the business is completely on the wane. But the Bori community, which is undergoing the largest cluster redevelopment program currently, Bindi Bazaar is almost unrecognizable. What would change about the stories that you back then if you had to pursue them now?
In fact, the biggest thing that I would miss in this cluster thing was the chawls. The chawls that were there, and it will all be replaced by skyscrapers. So, and they all will be given flats, and they'll all close their doors, and they'll all stay within that 4 walls. That the whole culture of mingling with your neighbors will be missing. And in fact, I have been born and brought up in a chawl, and I really miss that flavor, of living in a chawl where you can walk into anybody's house, and they can walk into your house, and that whole sweetness about the relationships is all going to go out of this cluster development. And for a photographer, it's a nightmare to shoot concrete towers. And even today, when I went to shoot, I got so much little flavor here and there. And as I'm seeing the towers coming up, I'm sure that will be lost forever.
Chiro's shot the Imperial Towers and lots of structures. Do you want to say something to that?
I think, the more I think about the city now, I think as documentation, since we are talking of this whole transition thing, I would be very interested in kind of, a large project which is kind of documenting the physical city, these neighborhoods which are now coming up with, and I'm not necessarily at this probably my whole Eugene Atgay kind of thing coming out at various points. I look at these cities, around me, and I kind of think sometimes that a lot of the old buildings have survived for so long. We keep looking at 30-year-old buildings, 40-year-old buildings, which are kind of in really bad shape, and you're saying, let's redevelop it and stuff like that. And you're kind of suddenly looking at these kind of humongous towers coming up. And I wonder, in 30, 40 years, are those going to be redeveloped as well? So are we going to be in this constant sort of mode of, of building? And I think which kind of then makes me kind of think it would be really kind of interesting, or rather really important, not interesting, important to kind of have photographers kind of document these built-up sort of spaces, of the city as it exists today. And in a very serious kind of documentation. It's not like that, the Imperial Tower pops up in a corner somewhere, or, Lower Parel skyline kind of is, as a backdrop of something you're photographing. It's not that, but it's kind of very serious kind of documentation. Say, for instance, in the early 90s, suddenly, when the Shiv Sena came in, some 20-odd flyovers came up, right? Most of us, I talk to a lot of my students, some of whom have, say, grown up in Bombay. They have no memory of those kind of places. They don't know what Dadar TT was like, for instance, or Science Circle was like, what Maheshwari Udyan was like. These are all spaces which have changed. When I was, I'd been commissioned at one point to photograph the Muslim neighborhoods of Bombay from Crawford Market going up to JJ and all those lanes and by-lanes. The project kind of died. But the interesting thing was, this was just before the Mohammad Ali Road flyover came up. There wasn't even a whiff of the news that a flyover is coming up. And as I would wander about in those neighborhoods, the first murmurings of a flyover was thing. that it's coming up. And I remember in this kind of moment of great panic, I used to stay at Mazgaon then. I would kind of get into a 3 limited bus, sit on the right on the window, right on top, and go up and down that road to be able to photograph Mohammad Ali Road as it was then. So I have pictures of that road in ways that people have probably forgotten. And so I think, it's very important as to kind of have that sort of documentation of the city as well. I don't know how it can be done. Maybe it needs, a sort of an official sort of version saying, can we deploy a battery of photographers to kind of photograph Bombay in a certain way? Like the whole Depression era, that kind of a project, something like that. But I think that's really, really important. To be able to do that in a city which is changing so fast, So.
I remember I think last night I was looking at one of your pictures of the towers in Matunga. And I realized that over the last 4 years that I've been here, that picture would just not have existed because there's a flyover.
Exactly. I remember when we were in Time Out, I had 2 stints in the magazine. The first stint, when I left, we used to kind of be up on the 21st, right? 21st floor, whenever there were like official gatherings or parties or whatever. And it gave us, so this is SR House at Mahalakshmi Station. It gave you this amazing view of the city. I had made a few pictures, not very good, just because I happened to be there, so, you do a few pictures from there. But I remember when I joined, I resumed my job after 3 years or 3.5 years. It was remarkable how much the skyline had changed, and I kind of wished that I had, with a little more seriousness, kind of photographed the views from up there. So I think, this I think is very important to be able to do. When I look at, say, pictures of, like I have a whole collection of city books at home. And these are not like, say, Raghu Rai's Calcutta, not that, but interesting ways in which photographers have looked at cities. So there's a very fascinating book that I have, which is called, I think it's called New York Vertical. Okay, and the book is like a slender, sort of narrow, long book. And it's basically New York high-rises. And it's such an incredible...
Individual pictures of
That's right. There are also individual pictures that are kind of, city views and all that. But it's largely kind of, short, keeping in mind that I'm looking at like high-rises. And so the whole book is kind of formatted that way. But that's what I'm saying. I think that kind of documentation of, the built up areas of the city are kind of very crucial, I think, so...
Linked to all of these thoughts is my next question, which is, what are the stories that you think you would be chasing today if you were to embark on a long-term project, both of you? What do you think you would pick on?
Right now, I've been shooting for the last 12 years now. And I'm documenting the Padmini Premier taxis. And I think in 2019, they will be off the roads of Bombay forever. And luckily, I happened to see Raghubir Singh books on Ambassador, which he had shot all over India. And it kind of gave me an inspiration to shoot the taxis in Bombay then, And then the notification came that they will be off the road in 2019. So I've just accelerated my shooting and trying to document that last stage of the Premier Padmini taxis in Bombay.
You, Chiro?
I can't think of anything that I would really start right, because I think also the way that my projects develop is, so it, like say for instance, for many years I was kind of thinking, how would I photograph, how would one photograph, say, contemporary India, and not looking at, the kind of images, say, that one would do for a magazine, which is, walk into a mall and do some pictures, from up there. Not that, but how else would you photograph it, which kind of then led me to start photographing in the chain cafes in Bombay, so which are like, really the baristas and the CCDs, and then Starbucks came and Costa came and all that. So I would really hang out there, have all my meetings there and do pictures, because these cafes seemed like a little window into the kind of India that we are today, as opposed to, say, the India that I was seeing when I was growing up, which is essentially the pre-liberalization India. So I think my ideas kind of really take a lot of time to evolve, to kind of first get formulated in my head, and then kind of, slowly keep at it, keep chipping away. In the process, obviously the idea kind of transforms, usually organically, because you're doing a lot of things about the idea and around it and all that. But so I don't know what I would photograph, but obviously there are a lot of things about the city which are, which you read in the papers, which you kind of overhear, which you do all, which are all kind of getting processed in one's head. I mean, and at some point, I'm assuming some of those would take form. So it's difficult for me to say what I would photograph right now, but various things going on in the head.
But what are some of your stimuli when you begin upon a project? And these could be completely non-photography sources.
Yeah, totally.
What are some of the things that get you started?
I mean, sometimes it could also be a tiny little news report that you read somewhere. It could be, like for instance, commuters. I mean, I'll tell you the story of commuters. So commuters was a project where I was photographing my co-commuters in the train. I stay in Thane and I come into work every morning into town. And every morning I would do a portrait of the guy who by sheer coincidence happened to be sitting in front of me. So the way the project started was I had been toying with the idea of how does one create a portrait of a city. I think a year or a year and a half before that, I had been commissioned to do a book on Bombay, which was essentially a popular portrait of the city. So it had, Bollywood, it had the Kohli Fisher women, people hanging from the train, all of the usual tropes. But obviously there was a parallel city that one could photograph. And so I think there were various triggers for that project. I mean, but this is where it started from. I remember my friend Jerry Pinto and I, we used to travel together a lot. We were in Cambodia and Vietnam. I had wanted to go to Cambodia because obviously we both had Angkor Wat on our checklist. But I was also very interested in, seeing S21 and and I remember like walking in there and seeing those large kind of black and white mugshots and being just completely riveted. I mean, and I know for a fact that in some way the approach of how commuters were shaped, like, about 6 or 8 months after that, that was also a kind of trigger because, it really got me thinking over there. And I remember Jerry and I talking once we were back in our hotel room, or probably the next day, that I wonder, how long, can one sustain interest with mere mugshots, But the thing is that the thing there had us riveted. I mean, obviously we kind of had a background story about what S21 was about and all of that. There were a lot of other things. For instance, I remember finally being able to afford to buy Sebastião Salgado's book on workers. Okay, and I knew that this is not the way I would want to photograph my city. And I'm saying this specifically because I was also thinking of Bombay as a city of work. So the commuters on the train. These were people who were going to work and coming back, and So I think there were various things which were triggers. There were things you're also finding and doing and coming across which are telling you that this is not what I want to do. So I think it works both ways. How one would approach. You would eliminate ideas. You would take up little thoughts from some other places, add it to your process and things like that. So there were various things of that kind which for over 6-7 months one was processing in one's head till one said, okay, this is how I'm going to photograph commuters. For instance, I had no idea that I'm going to photograph in a train. I mean, it happened quite by chance, and the train, the moment I figured it, I was in the train and I was kind of thinking about it, that this is probably the right place to shoot it because so much of, the drama of Bombay life gets played out in a train compartment,
And
So
it is the lifeline of the city.
absolutely, So I think it works in various ways. I mean, and I think you have to be open to the whole very serendipitous nature in which things can influence the way you, produce an idea or a work. Yeah.
Fawzan, what are some of your stimuli?
I have been teaching photography for last 10 years. And, whenever I give my students an assignment, and there are 40 odd students, and when they come back with images, I really get worked up, because these are fresh minds. There's no cobweb in their mind. They really don't adhere to compositions, lighting, and the way pictures should be shot. They're very wacky, very creative. And when I see the images, not all of them, but few of them really give me a kick, I said, wow, this is great, Why didn't I think it like this, Maybe, 28, 29 years of shooting, you shoot with certain aspects of pictures. But these guys are just fresh. They bring such freshness in the images that every time I give them assignment, I am more eager to check their work rather than they're eager to show me the work, So I want to continue teaching because I'm not teaching, but they are teaching me, in a sense.
So there's a newness to the images,
Every
new
time.
way of looking at the city every time.
So I give them all kind of incentives. The best picture gets a silk Cadbury, and the second best picture gets another Cadbury. And it's my personal selfishness that I want to see their good pictures, so I could take away something from them,
I think we're nearly at the end of our time, but I have one last question for both Chiro and Fawzan, and then we'll open it up to the audience for questions. Both of you, if you could pick out one work or one photograph that you've shot over the last however long that you've been shooting, that you feel encapsulates your Bombay or your relationship with the city, and can you tell us a little bit about the process of making it?
I think for me, I think it would be the commuters. Simply because, now when I look back, I must have spent a third of my life on those trains. So I think it would have to be commuters. And like I was mentioning, the way that work was produced was really, I would get into the train. I kind of created a routine for myself. So I started taking the 10-3 local from Thane. So some days the train would already be at the platform, which meant that, there would be limited seating options. There would be days when, I would probably jump into the train like all these other commuters, and I would probably find a seat of my choice. And then you would really leave it all to chance. I mean, whoever came and sat in front of you, you had to kind of create a portrait of this gentleman. And I think it went on this way for almost 3 or 4 years. And I would kind of, play little games with myself to kind of make it a little tougher. Because sometimes there were these moments of self-doubt when I thought, this thing which I was mentioning, would just mugshots, would it work? Or say, for instance, is it seeming too silly and things like that? So then just to make it a little more difficult, I would tell myself, look, if you've kind of got a place and and there's a guy sitting in front of you, but you spot someone else in another corner of the compartment who you think has a more interesting face, you cannot get up, you can't change your place and go and shoot a picture. So, you have to discipline yourself in kind of seeing this guy's face, the so-called ordinary face, and kind of seeing it as an interesting face. So I think, I think for me, the commuters would really be the work, which would be closest But then I also like my work on the public clocks because I think it. I don't think a documentation of that kind exists. Okay.
It's like an archive of the city.
Yeah, meaning, however obnoxious it sounds, but like I'm saying, that it doesn't, though I'm saying it about my own, but I don't think an archive like that exists. So I think also, on a personal level, I think this was my very first idea that I had about photographing the city. It wasn't actually an idea which was also about photographing the city. It has grown to be that. So in 1996, when I was photographing it, I don't think it was fashionable to kind of photograph the city. Now looking at cities is kind of a fad. At that time, no one cared. In fact, I remember people had laughed at me when I was doing those, when I would do, the books with Sharda Dwivedi, which was again my little Eugene Adge moment, I think. I don't think, documenting the city was something which was fashionable then. I think it's come to be now. So I think these two would be, it's hard to pick one, so I'll take these two. Yeah.
Fawzan?
For me, it's the monsoon, which I always love to shoot.
Any one particular image that really stands out?
Yeah, one particular image is really, there in my Bombay book. And I was just walking from VT side to go towards Cross Maidan. You're walking across that Bombay Gymkhana. And it was already a grey day. And this very old, fragile man with a very rickety umbrella, I could see him walking towards me. And suddenly there was a gush of rainfall. And we just crossed each other. And I got 2 frames. He's trying to open his umbrella. And it wasn't very successful because it was quite windy. And we crossed and I managed to get 2 frames. And I really like that image because it shows the moment of this old man trying to struggle against the nature, and not struggle, in fact, fighting the nature in that sense. And those days we used to shoot with the analog camera, so I had no idea what I've got.
Where is this image from? What year?
It's in the book. It was shot at crossing of Azad Maidan.
I meant what year is this from?
Yeah, it must be at least 20 years back. Yeah. And I really kept that image very safely. I put it in a plastic cover and covered it because I like that image so much. It was a monsoon image.
If that's not an encapsulation of Bombay, I don't know what is. Questions from the audience?
Hello. Good evening, jury. Firstly, thank you for the kind words, and it was very intellectual, to be said. The question that I want to ask to you both you guys, what has been the biggest change that you have seen over the years from the time you began your photography till now?
I think people are caring less, about the city. So I would imagine that would probably be, for instance, I kind of often wonder, if you're all the time so much looking into your phones, you're not looking at the city, so you don't care. So I'm talking to people who don't seem to know the city at all, So I think for me that's the biggest change, over these years, And of course, the physical city has changed dramatically as well, yeah.
For me, it's the ease at which pictures are shot today, And every comfort makes the person lazy, and that has also percolated down in photography, And because you can shoot, you can see, you can shoot more without applying your mind. And in those days, when we had a limit of 36 frames, every frame counted, Okay, we couldn't shoot more than 3 frames per situation on an average. So I feel the easiness at which people shoot these days are just making them more and more lazy about things.
Do you think we value our pictures less now that we have to?
The picture dies. Most of the images, like 80% of the images, are shot with with your mobile phone. And in my wife's case, whenever we went on holiday, She never believed in posing for a camera. She always take out iPhone and shot her pictures. And all her journey pictures were with her on her camera. One day it crashed. All the pictures went off in one go, Then she was banking on my pictures, which I shot with camera, So nothing is saved in that sense, The memory goes, the images goes, everything is like gone. So
yeah, thanks a lot. So you mentioned that you're close friends with Jerry, and I've read his work. He's brilliant. So
Sorry?
I've read some books of his. He's brilliant. And then you said you've worked with Sharda Dwivedi. So I was
Right.
wondering that you are in company with such brilliant people. How does that cross-pollinate your work?
Oh, completely. I mean, I think, and I think my meeting Sharda Dwivedi kind of changed my career completely. Sharda had first seen the pictures that I had done of, the buildings with clocks. There were very few pictures, I think about 5 or 6, of which I think there were maybe a few more, maybe 9 or whatever, of which I think 3 she didn't know of. And Sharda not knowing any of them was, I figured later, was quite an achievement. So I think Sharda then kind of gradually took me under her wings in many ways, offered me my first book, which was offered to me when I was about 2 years in my career. I don't think that happens too often. She offered me my very first exhibition, which was right here at the David Sassoon Library on these buildings with clocks. So I think Sharda, I think if there was one person who kind of really gave my career a serious push, I think it had to be Sharda. And I don't think, and now when I'm kind of revisiting the Clocks project, I miss her more than, I mean, I can't even tell you how much I miss her. Jerry Pinto, I don't know what to say. Jerry is my closest friend. I mean, so I think Jerry's impacted my work in, I don't know how to actually say that, to be honest. I think we have traveled together so much. I mean, we've kind of conversed about things, not necessarily photography, I mean, all kinds of things, we've probably shared, I think 15 years of our lives together. I mean, and that's, I think Jerry's introduced me to a whole bunch of people who on my own I may not have come in touch with. I think, and I think those kind of then further went on to impact the way I think my mind was working. I mean, the way the ideas developed, all of that. So I don't know what beyond this, what I can say. I mean, I probably can't articulate it, but I'm kind of seriously thankful to these two people for having known these two people, So, yeah.
Hi. Do you think going to school for photography is important in this day and age?
Fawzan, would you like to answer that?
Yes. Only because, see, no school is going to teach you anything. I feel we all share our experiences of how to go about doing pictures. That I'm very clear about it. I don't tell students that I'm come to teach you guys. It's just sharing, like what I take from them, I also give them my experiences and how they should not repeat the same mistakes again, So in that sense, when you go to a school, you are exposed to a lot of faculties from different genres of photography, and that helps you learn what is really your interest, You may want to take up architecture, you may want to take documentary, you may want to take fashion, tabletop, commercial. You have no idea when you start photography. And then you realize that your love and your interest is in this particular genre, and you would have never realized it till you went through the coaching, So I feel, in a way, it helps people understand the different nuances and genres of photography. Of course, there's a fee to be paid.
Can I, I think, I mean, that question, I mean, it also is like saying, I mean, is it important to go to school at all? Because you can go to any kind of school, but then, I mean, there's a certain kind of learning which you have to do on your own. And I think that's the most critical thing. You know, once you come out of class, or, you know, what are the kind of books you're reading? I mean, what are your other influences? I think that's important. So just going to a photography school is not the end. This is kind of becoming a photographer. You know, I think I don't think a photography school teaches you to be curious. I think that you have to develop on your own if you are not already kind of curious. You know what I mean? So I think a school, and I think, has its place. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It's important. I think a theoretical grounding, I mean, you know, all of that, being able to hang out with a kind of peer group, you know, I think all of it is important, you know. But the most important thing is, what are you doing after the class? I mean, what is the other education, parallel education that you're giving yourself? What are the other issues that you're kind of engaging with? You know, it's not just about going out and doing a picture at the end of the day. You know, that's the easiest thing, trust me. You know, so.
Hi. Hello, Chiro. Hi, Kate.
Oh, hi.
Hello. I wanted to ask if there was one thing that you could change back about the city to the way it was, what would it be?
I don't know. Maybe get all the clocks working. Just kidding. No, I don't know really. I mean, probably make it a little more livable. I mean, it's just getting progressively more and more difficult a city to live in, to navigate each day. You know what I mean? So, you know, when I look at older pictures of Bombay, I kind of think, oh, how nice, you know, broad roads, less cars, you know, all of that. I mean, trams as well. Yes, I wish there were trams on the street again. So I wish it wasn't as hectic a city as it is today. I wish it was, you know, the pace was a little slower. I can't seem to keep up with it now, you know. So
I just want to add something, you know. In the earlier days, it was so much easier to shoot and walk around with a camera, you know. And these days, everybody wants permission and everybody wants whether... In fact, one day I was shooting a vada pav guy just down the road. And while I was shooting, he asked me, "There was permission hai kya shoot karne ka?" That guy on the road selling illegally is asking me permission, and I was zapped, you know. I said, this is strange, you know. So even he has understood that he can ask for permission, you know, whether I can shoot him. So first of all, I bought a vada pav from him. That made him like, oh, okay, chalo, some business aaya. And then I started talking to him. I said, yaar, why did you ask me this permission? He said, नहीं, मेरे को लगा तेरे पास permission नहीं होगा, तू shoot कर रहा है, और यहाँ पे सब लोग आके shoot करते. So I said, permission का क्या ज़रूरत है यार? And he had no answer, but at least he had the audacity to ask me that question, you know. So this permission Raj is again coming back, and everyone wants to, whether you walk anywhere and they ask you whether you have permission. You know, like I could easily shoot VT and Churchgate without any problem in the train, outside the train. I did a project on that. But now it's very difficult to shoot. You know, permission Raj is like really killing photography, you know.
I think we have time for one last question if somebody has one. There's one here.
There's someone.
This is what Fawzan, what you spoke about the technology changing so fast, and you said about the camera, which is exactly what happened when video came in, and when the analog technology was backseated. The films division, the Afridi, who was in charge of the archive, he said something very interesting, that India is going to lose 100 years of history on film because of this technology changing. And the same thing is happening with with the still photography, what you are talking about, it has happened in cinema. The beta cam, which was very popular after video, from the low band to the high band, and the later one which came in the beta cam, which has the lasting period for only 5 years, and after that there is fungus. And all those documentaries made in these years, they are all lost.
Yeah, very true. In fact, I was with Midday for 8 years, and we used to file up pictures, negatives, write caption neatly, the date, who was there in the picture, and file them, And when they moved places from here to there and there to there, and everything is lost, The whole process of we shooting pictures of the city, there's not a single negative now found in the archive, So it's just sheer negligence on the management part, who really don't understand the importance. At least Midday didn't do it, they didn't neither cataloged it, analoged it, whatever, And the whole, like not only my images, I'm talking about the staff photographers who have been working for the newspapers. Everything is gone. There's no archive ever. Right now, with digital, they have understood the importance of archive, but black and white, gone. And I'm sure it's the same case with a lot of newspapers,
Okay, thank you everyone. We're nearly out of time. Thank you, Avid, for organizing this. Everyone, Aisha, Khorshid, Urshila, Asad, who's not here. And thank you everyone for coming here. Have a lovely evening.